This is Martin Pytela and Scott Paton, and we are, well, health coaching away. So fibromyalgia itself used to be defined by checking on these specific points. They're mostly on the back, and they're at the back of the neck, base of the skull, back of the neck, top of the shoulders, and then further on down, and they're in pairs, and they're called the fibro points. And if you push on them and they're sore, that's one sure thing that you have this going. Anyway, the symptoms mostly include fatigue and then sensitivity to all kinds of things.
Right. And pain.
Easily set off. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chronic pain. And it's the main deal here with fibromyalgia is that it's triggered by a misprogramming in the brain. The amygdala, which actually lives just under the temple, just in front of the ear, both sides. The amygdala is a processor of inputs, and it's the instant evaluation of safe, not safe, danger, no danger. Am I okay? Am I not okay? And it acts a lot like a doorbell in the sense that if you hit a doorbell just like this, you get ding or boom. But if you have misprogrammed amygdala, you hit the doorbell, boom, but it stays on for a long, long, long time. You could be triggered for a day, a week, a month, or years. There are people who are in a constant flare. It's called a flare, essentially, like flaring a flame. That's how I see it, anyway.
Yeah. So there's the
success of the group, right?
You know, if you had a broken arm and you were in a sling, people would give you sympathy, but nobody can see it. So everyone, well, you look fine, so you must be fine, right? And it's in your head is what family members say. And now you can actually say, because there have been studies that have discovered this is one of the physical problems, is yes, it's in my head, it's in the amygdala, and it's turned on to the point where my body just has these chronic problems. And you can't see it, but it's like right there. And it's not a psychological issue. It's not, you know, no. You're not crazy or anything like that.
It's physiological for sure.
Yeah. And trauma seems to be one of the things that brings it on, or too much trauma.
Well, there are four legs it stands on for sure. Trauma, stagnation, toxicity, and malnutrition. Those are the major groups of inputs that happen to us that will make it more likely. Right? Like we should be talking about triggers and thresholds. A threshold is how much can you stand. A trigger is what makes it worse. And so for me, for example, a trigger would be smelling artificial fragrances. For another person, it will be cigarette smoke. For another person, it will be smelling car exhaust. But it could be something like changing barometric pressure, an oncoming storm. Or it could be a noise. It could be something more physical, like a car accident or food poisoning, or something somewhat major that will trigger that. Anyway, that's the trigger, right? And so if your threshold is fairly high, your capacity is good, a bit of triggers won't do you much harm. But if your threshold is low, depleted, I guess I should be saying it upside down, if you have a lot of trouble in your bucket, it won't take a big splash for it to overflow.
Right. Or like we always, you know, the saying is the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be very big. The last brick on the load, and you can't move it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, that's what that is. And that's the fallacy of the modern medicine, is that they want to find that the last straw, the last brick, is the one thing. But it's never the one thing. If you're breaking the camel's back, he couldn't care less what's in the bags that you're loading on his back. All he knows is it's too much weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so fibromyalgia. People who have fibromyalgia are misunderstood because they look fine. They're just not fine on the inside, and they're accused of pretending or faking. They're not. But it's hard. You look normal, and you keep asking people, "Do something for me." I can't do it, and at some point they get tired of you. They just say, "The heck with you." You're just a user. You're abusing others to help you. Most people with fibromyalgia will reach a deep end that's supremely awful. So I would like to say that there are ways out of there, and we have traveled those paths many times with many clients. It's the dealing with the whole load. I would describe it as when you're sitting on 5 thumbtacks, you're hurting. You take 2 of them out, you're sitting on 3 thumbtacks. Things are a lot better, but you're still very uncomfortable. So the solution is to get them all out. Right? And getting them all out requires dealing with trauma, stagnation, toxicity, and malnutrition. You have to do all of that. And so I keep getting these questions on the group, right? Does anyone get swollen cheek? Does anyone get red ankle? Does anyone get a headache when the sun goes down? Like any combination of any one thing or any 2 things or any 3 things. And people want to know, is there anyone out there like me?
Yeah.
And the answer is any combination. It's possible. Because the histamine-mediated symptoms, histamine is the signaling molecule of inflammation. And inflammation is the method by which your body, your immune system, is trying to fix you. But if you're suffering from a repeat assault, you're unfixable. You will just have constant attempt to repair a constant trauma that's not going away. So what to say about that? The inflammation, it comes with symptoms. Redness, heat, swelling, pain, and loss of function. Those are the classic, right? The redness that's seen on the surface. So you will see some traveling redness. You may have it on your chest. You may have it on your shoulder. You may have it on your cheek. There will be redness at times. There will be heat. You will have symptoms all of a sudden, flushed face or flushed this or flushed that, whatever. Swelling for sure. And it could be any location. I've seen pictures that people send out, swollen toes, swollen ankles, swollen thighs, any body part, elbows and faces. The worst of it is the pain, right? The pain is everywhere, any one place. And it could be in your jaw, it could be in your temples, in your head, all over, back, this, that, all possible symptoms. The worst of it is the loss of function. You can't do anything. And when you're central, like when it's all over through the body, you're so debilitated, all you can do is choose the one thing that you're going to do today. Like you can choose to shower or you can choose to do the dishes. And then your bucket is empty. And you have to go and sit down and take a nap. Okay. I just keep saying, well, so there are these people out there on this group coming at us with, does anyone have this? Does anyone have that? Well, the answer is you will have endless number of symptoms because these histamine-mediated symptoms or histamine-mediated symptoms will include or affect any one of the body systems. So if it affects your reproductive system, you will have dysmenorrhea or problems with menstruation. You will have painful periods, stuff like that. If it hits you in the stomach, you may be throwing up or have diarrhea or have constipation, all possible. And it could be rotating or all at once, all three. It can hit your nervous system. You will have headaches, you will have backaches, whatever, any part, right? Anyway, I'm just going through the geography again. So the help exists. It is not with pharmaceutical drugs. Here's the problem. Drugs are designed to suppress a symptom, a single symptom. So you can have a pill that deals with a headache. You can have a pill that deals with a backache. You can have a pill that deals with fever. But fibromyalgia is a grab bag of many, many symptoms. If you start taking pills for all the symptoms you have, you'll be on 14 drugs and you will be having side effects that are caused by the pill that you took to deal with the side effect of the pill number 2 and 3. Like it's a stack that cannot be undone, and it's horrible. So the pharmaceutical method, is doomed to fail. So all these questions that we are getting, which is anybody on gabapentin? Is anybody on, I don't know, Lyrica, which I think is called pregabalin, I'm not sure. Is anybody on tramadol and blah, 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 whatever. Painkillers, beta blockers, this, that, and the other, whatever. All the range of the pills. Any one of you can have relief of some symptoms with a pharmaceutical drug. But each of these drugs will also have side effects. And so you will hear stories like, oh, I took, I don't know, let's just pick one, gabapentin for some time, and it was working, but it's not working anymore.
Yeah, and then they also talked about, well, my doctor wanted to, increase the dose, and then it was, well, it's, and actually, Martin, on this point, if I can jump in, we have a post from somebody that's talking exactly what you're talking about right now. She says, those who are able to take painkillers are very lucky. She considered a street drug where I'm from, and doctors won't give them. You get hooked and want more and more, and they say you're going to overdose. I'm off the charts in pain, and nothing over the counter helps. I need ideas for stuff that might give me relief because I'm wanting to, it's bad.
Of course. I mean, the despair is endless.
It's real, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things
the answer is that you cannot drug yourself to success. A problem caused by toxicity, which this is, cannot be solved by adding toxic things to the mix. Not in the long run. You can sort of paint over this patch. Do you know the game Whack-A-Mole?
Yeah.
Right?
Boom, and then boom, and then boom, and then boom, and then boom.
Right.
And then
You're chasing symptoms. You will chase a symptom A, and you will cover it with drug A1, and then you will find a symptom B, and you'll cover that with drug B1 or B2, whatever that is. And just covering those two is enough to cause a symptom C that you didn't used to have before. Bang, out it comes. And so you will develop things that include blood pressure issues, blood glucose issues. But the main one is dysregulation at the metabolic level. Your mitochondria go dysregulated and you'll get into fatigue. Inability to convert food into energy at a reasonable rate. That's the worst one. You're so tired that you can't even hold a job. You get so tired you can't even clean your house. Yeah. There are fixes for it. All of it is fixable. And the fixability stems from here. The resolution of the root cause. You cannot deal with the problem at the organ level or at the symptom level. You need to deal with the problem at the cellular level, where it actually is originating. Let me try an example. So this restaurant owner has a rat problem. There are rats coming into the restaurant, and they're especially rich in behind, in the lane. Well, if you take the medical approach to things, you will go in and you say, well, rats, we can shoot those things. So you start shooting at rats. And then the other thing you come up with is you can poison them. So you start laying poisoned rat food. Well, rats are out at night, so you'll be shooting in low light. You will be shooting rats and all kinds of other things. You will probably kill all kinds of pets that go out and raccoons and who knows what else is in the neighborhood. And then some of the dead rats get eaten by, oh, well, maybe some owls or eagles or whatever will find them. And now
Foxes.
They will be dying, foxes, yeah. They'll be dying from the rat poison that they ate because it was in the rat. So those are called side effects. Anyway, here's the solution. You come to the restaurant and you say, rats, what is the food source for these rats? Oh, look at here, the garbage can behind your restaurant where you're putting all your scraps. That's what's keeping them fat and richly present. So deal with your garbage. Get rid of this. The rats will starve and move away.
Yeah.
So if you go to a doctor who says, I have a thing that's going to poison it away, or I have a thing that's going to cut it out, you're going at it the wrong way. You're not dealing with the source. You're dealing with the symptom. The symptom's not the problem. It's sort of like saying, well, we need to remove the sirens off of ambulances because whenever there's an ambulance, a siren comes by.
Right.
I mean, it's backwards. Anyway, so now what are the solutions, right? Toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, trauma. You have to resolve the original causes. Let's dive into trauma, shall we, Scott?
Sure.
You try. You have had a very direct experience with living with someone with fibromyalgia.
Well, it's not easy healing emotionally. But it's also really interesting when you think of, I mean, it really is a seed, right? Like you plant a seed and you either have a rose or you have a weed. This
Yep.
way, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
in the case of my wife, my ex-wife now, hers was when she was 11 and very thin, a girl in her class said, "You're fat." And that caused her to be anorexic, which of course the therapist will tell you that there's no cure for it. And I said, well, that's BS. And I said, do you trust me? She says, yes. I says, well, when you think you're fat, ask me. So she would come up to me every once in a while and said, you know, am I fat? And I'd say, no. And she'd say, and she'd pinch the skin on her hand, right? And she'd say, well, look at this. And I go, that's skin. That's not fat.
Yeah.
And so her, you know, so it's kind of like this one little thing and it spiraled down into this terrible condition. Now, this condition affected her mom. Her mom felt tremendous guilt. I think this is the world according to Scott. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Tremendous guilt. And then it expressed itself in attempted suicide. My wife came home. Well, we weren't married at that point. And she found her mom and an empty bottle of some drug on the side of the table. And her mom was out of, so she calls the ambulance. The ambulance comes, they pump her out, and they give her a drug to help her with her depression. And the drug basically made her like this.
Yeah, a zombie.
Yeah. So we get married. We have a nice little home. and I'm working at a grocery store, so I bring food home. And for some unknown reason, guided by angels probably, I brought home a Black Forest cake for dessert. So she cooks up a meal, and as we're sitting down to eat, she says, "Oh, by the way, Mom and Dad are coming over tonight." I go, "Okay, great." And so we finish the meal. I bring out 2 plates full of Black Forest cake, right? And not huge, but just a nice, a normal size. Put it in front of her, put it in front of me. We sit down, the doorbell rings. Answer the doorbell. It's Mom and Dad-in-law. Come on in. We're just finishing dinner. So they come and they sit in the dining room table with us. Now, Mom is like this, like totally brain dead, zombified. And all she does is stare at Lisa's food like this. She is seeing her daughter eat a Black Forest cake. Now, she could not get, what did they fight about when she was a teenager? Here's ice cream cone, eat it. No, I'm not eating it, right? So this is totally like unbelievable to her mom. And she
okay. So she's witnessing an impossible situation.
Yeah. And she's totally drugged up. And so she leaves. And I said, "Did you see your mom staring at the Black Forest cake?" She says, "Yeah." Well, and maybe it was a little bit longer than this, but to me, it felt like a week later, she was off of all of her drugs and she was working at a department store in the women's fashion section for the next 20 years. No problem.
So she stopped being drugged.
Yeah. And she stopped being depressed. So, I think if you can find the key to unlock the trauma and heal it, then there can be a miraculous thing. Yeah. But I think what's happening is we have this downward spiral and people are in pain and they feel hopeless and helpless. And they it's like, if there's no hope, man, oh man,
well, I tell you, I want to talk about thing that I had something to do with. I had problems too, right? My problems were mainly physical. I suffered from back pain. And I found a book by John Sarno, Sarno. And the one that I found was called Mind Body Prescription. There are several books that John Sarno wrote. He's now deceased. But back when, he was successfully curing people from migraines because of this. Your subconscious has in it a suppressed, uncontrollable rage that you're not allowed to express. Let's just say that I have some hateful thoughts toward my father or my mother or my sibling or whatever. Some thoughts that are wrong. They are bad. But they got into my brain when I was a 4-year-old or 5-year-old or 7-year-old or whatever, a young child. And they're there, and I'm not allowed to express them. So instead of expressing them, I will come up with some distraction. That's what the subconscious mind will do for you. And the distraction will be something physical. A pain in the elbow or pain in the whole body. Take a pick. And that is what's going on. So the patients with migraine that John Sarno was treating, he taught them a process that takes about 6 weeks to complete. And you essentially start negotiating or renegotiating the deal with your subconscious. You thank it profusely for protecting you from yourself and asking it to come up with a different way of expressing this protection. That it's okay to come up with something that is much less threatening and much less awful to your body, and yet keeps you protected. Or just process the trauma and allow it to go by. Anyway, so John Sarno process, I went through it. I wrote myself a note and I did whatever's in the book. And sure enough, the back pain went away. It just stopped. And I think that most people should be able to resolve the conflict that exists in their subconscious that cannot be expressed in the physical world. And there are other methods, right? Go for that.
Yeah.